If the interim release is granted, will former President Duterte be placed under arrest only during the pre-trial phase, or will it continue throughout the entire trial if the charges are confirmed?
One would hope that it will continue throughout the whole trial if charges are confirmed, obviously.
How do you respond to Vice President Inday Sara Duterte's claim that President Mar.Cos Jr. is working with the ICC to remove her father from politics and to keep the ICC relevant?
President Mar.Cos said that he was complying with Interpol. He wasn't complying with Interpol, he was complying with an ICC arrest warrant. So that is cooperation with a court to which the Philippines is no longer a member.
Former President Duterte back home, what factors support that level of confidence?
Between 1 to 10?
Yes.
I would say 100. If President Mar.Cos would invite me to Manila, I'd sit down with him and I'd explain to him that nothing will happen if he allows my clan to go back to Davao. He's an old man. Let him live out his life in peace, quietly, and don't interfere with him.
Magandang araw po sa inyo lahat. Action Update PH nagbabalik na. Paganda ho na pag-uusapan natin ngayon, mga ka-update. Mantakin po ninyo, pag-uusapan natin ngayon ang sinabi nga ni Atty. Kaufman dito kay Mar.Cos Jr. So nito mga ka-update, talaga namang malalaman natin kung magkakaroon na ng pagkakalaya ang ating Pangulo. Kasi mga ka-update, itinanong po ni Alvin Dave Zarzata kay Atty. Kaufman kung magkakaroon ng interim release o makakalaya na si ating Pangulong Duterte. Sinagot na ho ito ni Atty. Kaufman. Kaya mga ka-update, pakinggan ho natin ang naging interview kay Atty. Kaufman.
Attorney Kaufman, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm well, thank you very much.
How is our former President Rodrigo Roa Duterte?
Well, as I've said, he's always in good spirits, but he's 80 years old and he's tired.
Attorney, in your motion to defer adjudication on the urgent request for interim release, you cited several delays and roadblocks. Could you elaborate on the nature of these obstacles? Or are they primarily procedural, diplomatic, or a combination of both?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not entitled to elaborate further. The matter is subject to confidentiality, as you would have seen from the filings on the ICC website. A number of parts of that filing are redacted, and they're redacted for a reason, to protect certain interests.
Okay. Attorney, what are the specific delays, whether it is procedural, evidentiary, or logistical, that you believe justify a reassessment of the current schedule for the confirmation of charges?
Well, I want to make it clear, at the present moment in time, the defence hasn't asked to postpone the confirmation of charges hearing. The nature of the delays and the obstacles are confidential, but they are the information that we haven't received, because that's basically the substance of our application is, in our opinion, crucial for determining an issue which could potentially bar the holding of the confirmation of charges hearing.
Because, Attorney, there is a concern that the pre-trial chamber may interpret this delay as a tactic, stalling measure rather than a legitimate legal need. How do you respond to that?
Well, the pre-trial chamber know exactly what we've argued, and the pre-trial chamber will understand that we're not deliberately stalling. I don't deliberately stall anything. I do what I believe is the best thing to do for the interests of my client.
Okay. How about the Rule 121 of the ICC Rules of Procedures and Evidence, indicating it clearly that ensuring the efficiency of proceedings? In your view, has the Office of the Prosecutor failed to uphold any part of that obligation in this case?
Well, I'm the last person who would normally hand out awards to the prosecution, but to their credit, they have actually met their disclosure requirements as expected in this case. It's not been the case in other situations before the court, but ironically in this case, they have met their disclosure obligations. What I can say that we've been disclosed a huge amount of information, and that will take time to assimilate and to learn.
Attorney, on another note, 3 Philippine senators have called on the Senate to urge the government to formally petition the International Criminal Court for the interim release of the former president, proposing a house arrest arrangement in The Hague. Legally speaking, how likely is the ICC to consider such an appeal under any circumstances, if any? Could this influence the court's discretion in granting interim release under the Rome Statute?
I think such an initiative on behalf of the senators is to be welcomed because it basically expresses the will of the people. However, the judges rule on evidence and rule on risk factors. So whatever these senators say, and I welcome it, I really do welcome it, and I thank them for it. Regardless, the judges have a set of rules which they use to decide whether or not an individual should be released or not.
Attorney Kaufman, is your legal team actively considering the options reportedly raised by Attorney Harry Roque to file a separate civil action under Dutch domestic law challenging the legality of Mr. Duterte's or President Duterte's arrest and detention?
Perhaps you could enlighten me. Where is Harry Roque proposing to file this?
Under Dutch law? Under Dutch legal.
And what's the nature of this? Has he mentioned it in the media?
No, not yet. Because it was proposed that a separate legal remedy filed under Dutch laws could be a possible option. Are you actively proposing the same?
Well, this is not the first time I've heard such a crazy scheme. I would put it that way because at the end of the day, the Netherlands have to be involved in any request to release an individual from the court, because in order to go to a target country or country where the person has selected to be the place for him to be under house arrest, should obviously the pre-trial chamber agree, he would have to pass through the Netherlands territory. So to initiate a case in the Netherlands against the Netherlands would be a big mistake.
Aside from the recent efforts filed before the ICC, such as the petitions for disqualification of certain judges and the request for interim release, what other legal avenues or procedural steps are you currently exploring to strengthen the case and secure the eventual return of the former president?
Well, there is a petition before the court for interim release. As you might know from a decision given by the judges yesterday, the decision on interim release will be postponed temporarily in order to allow us to present further crucial information to the pre-trial chamber.
On that note, Attorney, congratulations on the grant of your defense request to defer adjudication of the urgent motion for interim release. Ideally, is this motion expected to be adjudicated prior to the set confirmation of charges?
I hope so, but it's all tied up with the issue of information that we haven't received, delays, which are not attributable to the defense.
What is the legal significance or advantage of granting the deferment of the adjudication of the urgent motion for interim release?
And I said we want to have all the information necessary to promote a claim for interim release. We still require crucial information which is available and can be made available, but because of various obstacles and delays, we haven't received it. I'm not entitled to elaborate any further on the matter.
Thank you, Attorney. If the interim release is granted, will former President Duterte be placed under arrest only during the pre-trial phase, or will it continue throughout the entire trial if the charges are confirmed?
One would hope that it will continue throughout the whole trial if charges are confirmed, obviously.
Attorney, according to the report, the ICC has disclosed 1,253 items of evidence related to alleged crimes against humanity involving the former president. Have you had the opportunity to review these materials in full? If so, what is your legal assessment or overall impression of the strength and credibility of the body of evidence?
Well, you talk about 1,000 or so items that have been disclosed. However, each one of those items sometimes contain up to 100 or even 200 pages. So it's an immense amount of information. It's disclosed electronically. And we have means and methods using the court's information technology systems to analyze that evidence, to perform keyword searches, to focus in on aspects of the case that interest us for promoting the former president's defense. I'm not going to comment on the strengths and the weaknesses. I'm not allowed to. However, we are busy learning that evidence. We have a short amount of time to do it. We have a fair idea what we want to argue at confirmation, but once again, that's strategy, which I shan't be disclosing in a media interview.
Yes. Do you believe political motivations, either locally or in the Philippines or within the ICC itself, are influencing the pace or direction of the proceedings?
Well, once again, I don't get into politics. That's not my job to start making pronouncements. I've said my views in the past regarding the political motivation behind former President Duterte's current presence in The Hague. But beyond that, I'm not going to comment.
How do you respond to the Vice President Inday Sara Duterte's claim that President Mar.Cos Jr. is working with the ICC to remove her father from politics and to keep the ICC relevant?
I'm not going to comment on Vice President's comments to the media. However, what I can say is that no investigations can be carried out in the Philippines without the approval of the Philippines government. Otherwise, it would be a breach of sovereignty. It depends which way you look at it. And once again, the former president was brought here because supposedly the President Mar.Cos, said that he was complying with Interpol. He wasn't complying with Interpol, he was complying with an ICC arrest warrant. So that is cooperation with a court to which the Philippines is no longer a member.
Are you saying that the Philippines, through these actions, are saying that we are not a sovereign country anymore?
No, I didn't say that. You can't carry out investigative procedures in another country without the approval of that country, otherwise it would be deemed a breach of sovereignty.
Is this action can also be characterized as not believing on our local judiciary?
Well, there's been all sorts of claims made by the current administration. They claim that there's no evidence left because it was all destroyed, and they claim falsely and without any foundation whatsoever that former President Duterte is possibly responsible for the destruction of that evidence. So that's why they argue that he can only be tried here. They've given a number of claims. All the time they're obfuscating the reason for him being transferred to The Hague. What I can say is that the correct place for him to be tried, given our jurisdictional arguments, is in the Philippines. He asked for a Filipino judge, he asked for a Filipino prosecutor, and he said, if I'm found guilty, I will sit in a Filipino prison.
Attorney Kaufman, can I just
Yes, go ahead.
Are you hopeful that it will be dismissed on lack of jurisdiction when Philippine government kidnap Fprrd and have him to ICC and Philippine government cooperating on witnesses which vindicate the Philippine government recognizing the jurisdiction of the ICC?
Well, that's a bit of a long question, but once again, our jurisdictional arguments are before the court, and the court will give its decision in due course. Whether it gives it before or after the confirmation hearing or during the confirmation hearing, I don't know. We're coming up to the judicial recess, and traditionally, pre-trial chambers have delivered consequential judgments on the last days of the judicial year. So we can only wait and hope.
On the other hand, why postpone confirmation of charges when this further prolong pre-trial detention of Fprrd? What's your timeline to have Fprrd released?
Well, once again, I haven't asked to postpone yet the confirmation of charges hearing. I'm waiting to receive crucial information, and I've asked the court to decide upon that crucial information before we get to the confirmation of charges hearing.
One last question for me, I'm sorry. Why did you not wait for the documents that you needed before filing the interim release, Attorney Kaufman?
You're assuming that I didn't ask for them before I filed for interim release. Once again, I've told you that there are certain obstacles that have been placed in our way. I'm not entitled to disclose the nature of those obstacles. I hope that they will be lifted and that we'll get the information that we require as soon as possible.
Attorney Kaufman, I understand that all available legal remedies before the International Criminal Court have been actively pursued in relation to the case involving our former president. In your assessment, attorney, have these efforts reached a point of diminishing returns? And to what extent do you believe the process have become politicized, if at all?
Listen, it won't serve my interests or Mr. Duterte's interests if I say that the court's a political court. I'm not going to say that, as much as people would want me to say that. It's just self-destructive. We do our best, we're lawyers, we're doing a legal job, we've explored all possible avenues and we've pursued them with maximum vigor.
Attorney, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that the Philippines still has a viable path to bring former President Duterte back home? What factors support that level of confidence?
Between 1 to 10?
Yes.
I would say 100 if President Mar.Cos would invite me to Manila I'd sit down with him and I'd explain to him that nothing will happen if he allows my client to go back to Davao. He's an old man. Let him live out his life in peace, quietly, and don't interfere with him.
We understand, attorney, that Senator Mar.Cos also came here twice already because she wanted to have a meeting with the former president and it was not approved by the ICC. What is the weight? Should it be allowed by the ICC, this particular meeting? Will it have an impact?
Once again, there are certain judicial decisions which have been taken which I'm not allowed to comment on.
Thank you, attorney. Last question. Do you have a message for the Filipino people who are closely following the ongoing proceedings before the International Criminal Court involving the former president Rodrigo Roa Duterte?
Yeah, here I'm going to use the Vice President's words. Take heart, be strong.
Okay, so good evening taong bayan, and for today po pag-usapan natin tong most recent na nag-viral na topic po, yung regarding dun sa 20% tax sa time deposit, specifically sa interest po ng mga time deposit. So kung makikita po ninyo dito, nakakatawa tong article ng Manila Times. So crocodiles 20% tax on savings interest. Okay, so anyway, we will talk about this and then I will also give a short explanation on basic principles of taxation para mas maintindihan nyo po talaga kung ano ba yung concept and nature of the power of the government to tax, and may konting maritesan din po tayo sa dulo. Explain ko or magbibigay po ako ng mga personal opinion ko as to this new tax na inimpose po sa time deposit. Okay, so good evening po sa inyong lahat. This is your quote-unquote favorite DDS lawyer at yan po ang explain ko sa inyong lahat for this evening's video. Kung mag-enjoy po kayo sa video na to, huwag niyo po sana kalimutan i-like yung video and of course mag-subscribe po sa YouTube channel ko. Okay, pero anyway po, for today I will first explain po muna talaga kung ano ba yung power of taxation. Okay, so the power of taxation is basically ito po yung kapangyarihan ng government natin, ng Republic of the Philippines, para po pabayarin tayo ng ating buwis from the income po na gine-generate natin as a citizen of the Republic of the Philippines. Okay, so yung pinakauna pong critical regarding taxation, the power of taxation, wala po kayong makikitang specific or express provision sa Constitution na nagsasabing pwede po mag-impose yung national government natin ng tax sa citizenry. Kung titingnan po ninyo yan, ang meron lang dyan is yung power ng Congress to enact taxation laws and then yung authority ng mga LGUs to also impose local taxes. Pero on a national level, wala pong nakalagay na specific constitutional provision. However po, kahit walang ganyan, pwede pa rin po tayo i-tax talaga ng ating government because the power of taxation po falls under what we call the inherent powers of a state. Okay? So when you say inherent power po, ito yung mga kapangyarihan ng government kung saan it is essential po to the very existence of the government. Okay? Kasi kung wala pong tax, hindi po makakakuha ng tax ang government, hindi rin po siya makaka-function. And it is for that reason po kung bakit tinawag yung taxes natin as the lifeblood of the government. Okay? So i-rephrase ko lang po para mas maintindihan nyo talaga. Ang power to taxation po is one of the inherent powers of a state, meaning kahit wala po yan sa Constitution, pwede po yan gawin ng isang government considering nga po it is the very lifeblood po ng isang government. So yung mga taxes po na binabayad natin, yan po yung ginagamit mismo para paandarin yung government natin. So yung mga infrastructure projects pong nakikita natin, yung mga pinapasweldo po sa public servants, and then yung mga funds din po na ginagamit para mag-operate yung mga offices ng mga public servants natin, and of course yung mga controversial ayuda programs po natin. Lahat po yan nanggagaling sa taxes na binabayad po natin as taxpayers. Okay? So yan po yung basic principles of taxation. So the source po of the new 20% tax imposed is from the Capital Markets Efficiency Promotions Act. Okay? Or CMEPA po. It is a new law signed by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. nung May and it was enacted in July. So very recent po, ngayong buwan lang. So ito pong article na binabasa ko is from Philippine Star Global. So hanapin nyo na lang po tong article na to by searching po the subject matter. Ito po yung ginagamit ko ngayon as basis kasi may chart po sila dito differentiating at maganda po para ma-compare talaga natin yung mga tax rates from the old law and the current law. Okay, so kung makikita po ninyo dito, tax rates before the CMEPA, so ito pa yung lumang batas, walang taxes po pag more than 5 years yung time deposit ninyo. Tapos before maturity of 4 to 5 years, meron naman na pong 5% and then basta po pag pababa ng pababa yung maturity, mas mataas din po yung tax rate niyan before. So when you say maturity po, ito yung period kung saan hindi mo pwede galawin yung pera mo sa bangko. So basically ito lahat tinanggal ngayon, tas under the new law po, yung SIMEPA naging 20% na siya, fixed 20% regardless of the maturity date or the nature po of your deposit. So for foreign currency deposit, it is also now 20%. Okay? So anyway po, ang pinakauna natin kailangan i-clarify talaga sa batas na ito is hindi po siya sa actual amount na dineposit nyo yung 20% is dun sa interest po na generate ng inyong deposit. Okay, so for example purposes po, kung mag-deposit kayo ng 10,000 sa bangko, hindi po kayo itatax ng 20% or 2,000 pesos. Hindi po yan yung amount na kukunin sa inyo. Kung ano lang po yung interest na ma-generate ninyo. So example, ito for example purposes na po. Sabihin natin 10% po yung generate nyo a year. So in 1 year, meron pong 1,000 na income na nag-generate yung deposit ninyo. So dun sa 1,000, dun po kukunin yung 20%. So more or less nasa 200 pesos po yun. Okay, so yan po yun. Hindi po sa actual amount deposited, rather it is in the interest that is generated po from the amount that you deposit, yung kukunin yung 20% tax. Okay, so that's just something that I would like to clarify kasi meron po akong mga nakikitang posts na misconception po. Akala nila dun sa actual amount deposited. Okay, so I am just emphasizing this po kasi it is also very important na fully ma-educate po talaga tayong mga nagde-deposit sa bangko as to these issues kasi baka po magkaroon ng tinatawag na bank run. Okay, when you say bank run, yan po yung situation kung saan magpapanik po yung mga bank depositors tapos bigla nilang i-withdraw, magkakaroon po ng massive withdrawal ng funds deposited, and in that situation po, posible po kasi mag-collapse ang isang bangko. And if a bank will collapse po, that will have a huge economic impact po sa bansa natin. So it is also very important po for us to be well informed para po hindi tayo magpanic agad kung may mga nakikita tayong mga ganitong balita regarding new taxation. Okay? So yan po yung explanation ko dyan. Pero tandaan po ninyo, hindi ko sinasabi na porket sa interest rate yung 20% is tama yun or okay lang na bigla lang tayong pinapabayad ng ganitong tax rates. I am not in that position po. I am simply explaining to you the importance of knowing the legal nuances po para makamake po talaga tayo ng informed and or smart decision regarding mga ganitong bagay. Okay? Sa ano ko na lang to, personal opinion. So I'm just saying personal opinion because of course I'm not an expert on the matter considering di naman po ako economist, diba? But I am still a consumer. I am a depositor in the bank and I like to read yung mga market na yan every now and then. So meron naman po tayong konting knowledge regarding this, yung mga percentages na yan, yung mga inflation and or interest rates. Okay? So anyway, yung pinaka-point ko po dito, yung first reason po kung bakit hindi ako in favor dun sa 20% na interest rate sa interest earned is because of the inflation rate po dito sa bansa natin versus the interest earned po sa mga time deposits natin. Okay? So kung makikita po ninyo yung inflation po natin, and this one is from 2024-2025. Ito po sa Philippine Statistics Authority po to. So from May, June, July, so on and so forth. Kung makita nyo, 3.1 all the way tumaas to 3.7. Tapos currently ngayon, nasa 1.7 po tayo for May 2025. So on average po, tingin ko yung inflation rate natin for the last year is somewhere between po 2 to 2.5%, okay, based on this data from PSA. So yung pinaka-point ko po dito, kung 2.5% yung inflation, tapos yung interest earned mo lang sa time deposit mo is let's say 6%, edi halos kalahati po dun sa in-earn mo sa interest na wala agad simply because of inflation, diba? 2.5 tapos 6% lang kinita mo, close to half agad yung nawala. So in other words po, kung sa inflation pa lang, halos wala ka nang income sa interest earnings mo, tapos ngayon dadagdagan pa ng 20%, edi parang ano na, close to more than half na po yung nalugi sa'yo agad simply by depositing your money in the bank. So sa ganyang situation po, ang tingin ko kung ako, parang wala nang point, di ba, na mag-time deposit ka. Di ilabas mo na lang yung pera mo in that situation, and if you withdraw your funds, if majority of the public will withdraw their funds, then of course, like what I explained earlier, that can lead to what we call nga a bank run, di ba? Tapos pag nagkaroon ng bank run, that will lead to a impact sa economy at sa bansa po natin. Okay? So instead na ma-entice ka mag-deposit pa ng pera mo, mawawalan ka na talaga ng gana because of this, considering yung other factors pa if we add yung sa inflation inflation, di ba? Plus the mere fact yung 6% po, that is for time deposits nga po yan eh. Paano pag hindi pala time deposit? So kung gawin mo lang yearly yung deposit mo, yung time deposit mo, mas mababa pa yung interest na ibibigay sa'yo ng bangko. Tapos yung itatax sa'yo 20% pa rin. Tapos yung inflation is similar pa rin naman yung application. So yun nga po, like what I stated already, mawawalan po ng purpose or sense or value to actually make time deposits. Okay? And the second reason naman po, eto punta naman tayo kay Mayor Vico Soto po of Pasig City. So dito kung makita ninyo, this is an old article already po, October 15, 2024, Inquirer.net. So anyway, yung subject po nito, yung title, Vico Soto, Pasig City to use annual savings for new City Hall. And the reason why I am sharing this, kasi yung sabi po dito ni Mayor Vico, we've saved a huge amount. We've saved what used to go to the standard operating procedure amounting to over 1 billion a year. Diba? So nakatipid po sila sa Pasig City ng 1 billion a year. Our funds keep growing at 1 billion per year over 3 terms. We've saved more than 9 billion and it could even reach over 10 billion, the Pasig City Mayor said in Filipino during his State of the City address on Monday. So yung point ko po dito, kung effective po, maayos at magaling po ang leader ng isang LGU, kaya po magkaroon ng ganito kalaking amount ng savings without actually imposing new taxes, 'di ba? So sila Mayor Vico lang, because of his transparency, his good governance style of leadership, this is not new income generated po, these are just savings, 'di ba? So dahil po sa savings ito, hindi na po nila kailangan mag-impose sa mga bagong local taxes para lang magkaroon sila ng pondo for the construction of their new city hall. So in short, yung point ko lang po, kung kaya sa Pasig tapos ma-emulate yan all throughout the country, edi madami pong savings ma-generate yung mga local government units natin, which can be used for more government programs without actually imposing new taxes, diba? So si Mayor Vico has already showed all of us that this is doable to have extra funds by savings via good governance. So sa tingin ko, kaya naman po yan ng national government natin, other LGUs, as long as we really stick to the very essence po of being a public servant. So anyway, yung main point ko po dito, wag po sana agad isipin na imposition of new taxes. Dapat unahin muna natin ano ba yung pwede ma-improve para mas maka-generate pa ng more savings ang government. Kasi tatandaan po natin, if your governance, your leadership is not effective, it is full of corruption, kahit na po anong increase niyo ng tax, a big portion of that po is mawawala pa rin because of corruption and red tape, diba? In other words, kung ako po tatanungin, wag po sana maging tax first lagi yung mentality natin, because that is added burden po to the citizens of the Republic of the Philippines, diba? Kung meron po tayong pwedeng mapagkunan ng funds, meron po tayong ma-save, yun po sana yung gawin muna, okay?